Hey everyone, I'm so excited that you're here today because we are going to be diving into such an important topic for anyone who has autoimmune disease, and this is gluten. Today's video is all about which foods contain gluten and what you can eat when you're avoiding it. This is part of a two-part series, so if you missed the first video, which is called Is Gluten Wrecking Your Health? And this is where I broke down what gluten actually is and why it's so problematic for so many people, go ahead and check that video out after you watch this. But first, a quick recap. So gluten is made up of two proteins. These are called gliadin and glutenin. And the problem with this is that gliadin is actually indigestible. And when it hits your small intestine, it triggers this protein called zonulin, which opens up your tight gap junctions. Essentially, this creates increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut. And that's when gluten fragments, along with other toxins and particles, go into your bloodstream, triggering an immune response and autoimmune symptoms. And that's why for my clients with autoimmune issues, I typically recommend cutting out gluten because it will help them to reduce their inflammation and gut irritation. Now, one of the most common questions that I get is, if I can't eat gluten, then what can I eat? The good news, there are really so many options, I promise. Removing gluten doesn't mean that you're missing out on a whole food group. People worry about that, but you won't miss a whole food group. And you definitely don't have to be low carb if you cut out gluten. But before we dive into all of the delicious and gluten-free foods, let's talk a little bit about what you need to avoid. So where do we find gluten? Gluten is hidden in a lot of grains like rye, wheat, barley, spelt, something called triticale, which is a hybrid of wheat and rye, malt, brewer's yeast, and wheat starch. But gluten is kind of sneaky and it shows up in surprising places that you wouldn't expect, like salad dressings and condiments and some flavored teas and coffees, lunch meats, even supplements. It's used as a thickener or a filler in processed foods, so reading labels is a must. And it's not always labeled as gluten, so that makes it a little more challenging. You might see things like malt vinegar, which is derived from barley, or yeast extract, or in seitan, which is a popular vegan ingredient that contains gluten. So to help with this, a little tip that I give my clients is to keep a list of gluten-containing ingredients on your fridge as a quick reference while you're learning. So then you're not guessing. Once you get used to reading labels, it really does get easier. Now, let's talk about why people with autoimmune disease really need to avoid gluten. When you have an autoimmune condition, your immune system is already in overdrive. I'm sure you know this. And adding gluten to the mix really can throw it into chaos. Because gluten increases intestinal permeability, leaky gut, which we talked about before, this can lead to more inflammation, which is the last thing that you need when you're dealing with autoimmune flare-ups. So cutting out gluten is really a critical step towards healing and feeling better. And trust me, I know it can be hard, but once you see how much better you feel without it, it will be worth it. So this brings us to our million-dollar question, what can you eat? The possibilities are really endless, and I just want to start with some nutrient-dense, naturally gluten-free options. These are vegetables and fruits. Load up on them, because eating the rainbow means that you're getting tons of vitamins, minerals, and fiber. And a lot of veggies like sweet potatoes, carrots, and squash are also great carbohydrate sources. Next, you want to include proteins and healthy fats. So we're talking about lean meats, fish, eggs, seeds, avocados, olive oil. Those are great sources. And proteins and fats are going to help you stay fuller for longer and help you to manage your blood sugar along the way. The third thing that you want to make sure that you're bringing into your meals are gluten-free grains. And you can still have grains. These include rice, quinoa, buckwheat, millet. They're totally gluten-free. So these are great staples that you can incorporate into your meals. Now I just want to quickly touch on processed gluten-free foods. In the last few years, the processed gluten-free food industry, I feel like it's exploded. What used to be available years ago compared to what it is today is amazing. It's wonderful, but it's important to remember that just because something is labeled as gluten-free doesn't mean that it's healthy. A lot of gluten-free snacks, breads, crackers are packed with starchy fillers and additives that really don't offer much nutritional value and can actually exacerbate your gut lining. So always make sure that you're reading the label. And here's a quick example of a typical gluten-free cracker. This is what will be in the ingredients. You're going to have things like cornstarch, white rice flour, palm oil, modified cornstarch, sugar, guar gum, these are not exactly nutrient dense, right? So I just want you to remember they're fine as an occasional treat, but try not to make them a daily staple because they're not going to benefit your health in the long run. So here are the main takeaways for today. First, if you're avoiding gluten, you still have tons of delicious, nutrient-dense options. Again, we're talking about veggies, fruits, proteins, and gluten-free grains. Second, choose whole foods over processed whenever possible. This is going to give you the most nutritional value, the most bang for your buck nutritionally. I really hope that this video gave you a better understanding of not only what gluten is, but which foods contain gluten and which foods you can eat instead. And I hope it gave you a little encouragement too to help you remember that just because you can't have gluten, your life isn't over. There are plenty of options. If you have any questions, just go ahead and drop them in the comments below or send me a message. I'd love to chat with you. And hey, if this video was helpful for you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future episodes, and share this with a friend or a family member who you know might be struggling with gluten. You never know who might need it. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you next time.